خب الان میخوایم یه سری دوستان سوالاتی که شما عزیزان از طریق سوشال میدیا برای ما فرستادین رو با برادرمون فیلیپ در میون بذاریم و ببینیم که پاسخ ایشون چی هستش. So Philip, these are the questions.
You haven't got a word in Farsi for social media.
Yes, we have.
It's social media.
Yes, social media. It's easier. If we want to translate some words from English to Farsi, it's longer and it doesn't make sense. So we prefer to just use the English
social
word. Exactly. So we received a few questions. The first one is, why churches divided if we have only one Lord and only one book and only one message?
Yes. I don't know how big your family is, but my family is a big family.
Okay.
So my father had 9 or 10 brothers and sisters.
Ooh.
And they all had children. And so I've got cousins. And they've had children and they've got cousins. And we don't recognise each other anymore. We don't know who they are. We don't. There was a family reunion at which half the people who came I had never heard of before. They were total strangers to me. And whereas my uncles and my brothers kind of look alike and look like my father, by the time you move 3-4 generations, they don't even look like us. I can't believe that they claim to be Jensens. And so Christianity has gone 2,000 years. And over that period of time, the look of what Christians look like has got further and further apart. And unless you return back to the original, you just slowly drift further and further away. You just evolve into different looking people. And so each generation tends to think that the church they grew up in was the real church. And of course it's a lack of historical knowledge, because if you checked 100 years before that, they didn't sing those hymns and they didn't have that kind of architecture and they didn't have this. But what you grew up singing is what you think was the real one.
Yes.
Well, you do that across 2,000 years and you find that the church just has evolved in all kinds of ways and patterns that have got very little to do with the New Testament. Right. Which is why the Reformation took place. It was reforming the church. And one of the principles of the Reformation was you always need to reform the church. Every generation needs to reform the church. So we always need to go back to the original. And that's why we keep on saying, go back to the Bible. Look at what it says and change in the light of it. Change by all means, but change in the light of it. Rather than continuing the practices of yesteryear because, well, that's the way it was always done, or that's the way I was taught. Because it just gets further and further away from the truth.
Exactly. When I was asked this question in one of our Bible study group, this just came to my mind and I said it. I said, you have a classroom with 20 students, you have one teacher with one book, but you see a few fails the test, one top student. It's also depending on the students, how they read the Bible, as you said, how they put the time in. If we have a lazy preacher, for example, so obviously we go astray.
And a sinful one who leads us astray, and those kinds of things happen, yes.
Exactly.
There used to be photostats rather than photocopiers. Before we had plain paper photocopies, we had photostats, which was a kind of a film. And when you took a photostat of a photostat of a photostat, it just got weaker and weaker and weaker as it went down through every generation. Well, Christianity is at the end of 2,000 years.
That's a good illustration.
That illustration has been destroyed by plain copy photocopiers. Exactly. Technology has destroyed that illustration.
We can't use it anymore. Yeah, wonderful.